Wilke was a minister, a pastor. He went to seminary. His parents decided that he could become a pastor. And so he did that. But his parents decided, I really can't remember what his parents did for a living, but they were concerned about Harold's future, because Harold was born with no arms, and so how do you live a life like that? And Harold proved up to the challenge. Harold excelled in living life without arms. He loved people, and he worked to bring hope to people with disabilities. He was politically astute. He knew how to make a good presentation for people on behalf of people with disabilities. He was very direct about that life, that he felt called to live, and that he felt others should have the opportunity to live up to their calling as well. He had a pen that President Bush handed to him after he signed the American with Disabilities Act. There were about 10 pens around, and Harold Wilke had one of them. And Harold signed a paper that I wrote with that pen. And it's very moving when you think about that Harold was there when President Bush signed the American with Disabilities Act. Harold had, you wouldn't think that Harold could eat and drink coffee or sip tea, or how would he feed himself? Well, Harold's feet proved possible to be just as not fluent in eating, but just as fluent as speaking French would be to an English person, or to a French person. It became second nature. It became a natural way for him to be in the world, to view the world through his feet. He used them to open doors. He used them to sip coffee, drink tea, cut his food on his plate, and lift the fork to his mouth, all with his right foot.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, that was really an amazing way of adapting to what happens to people. It was really an amazing way to do that. Harold went around for a year to every conference in the United Church of Christ to be with the conference for a while and bring people together. And I met Harold first at a conference held in Wisconsin shortly after I became ordained, within a couple years. And he addressed a room of us in Wisconsin. And I think it was an ecumenical gathering, but we in the UCC received an invitation to come to this meeting who had disabilities. And that was my first experience of Harold. So, and then I think he came out to, he came to the church in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and we had him come to our smaller church. He came to the big church. We had him come to our smaller church as well. And so that is really how I met him. And then he came to a board meeting for UCCDM and talked to us about clergy with disabilities. And he was really hopeful that the church would grow in its acceptance of clergy with disabilities. And I think he felt that clergy with disabilities did not have the same opportunity to prove themselves capable of doing ministry in the local church as he would have hoped.
So that makes me curious, because I really don't know about his career. I know that he was one of the founders with Virginia Cryer of what became UCC Disability Ministry, and I know he went abroad on behalf of the church at one time, but do you know what other kind of pastoral experience he was able to have?
I don't. I suppose I should look that up some. I think he served the church for a while, but then he became interested in the national church, and the national church became interested in him. And so I think he worked for the board for Homeland Ministry for several years. I think that's how he did. But I really don't know his own experience as a church pastor. Just like I don't know Virginia Cryer's own experience as a church pastor.
I think that might, as we do look to the future and what are the opportunities for clergy with disability, I think that's something to tease out.
I think so. Yeah. Yes, I would agree. We do need to discover that.
Yeah. Well, we do know that whether or not he served church, he certainly had an impact on the denomination, which is ongoing for us with UCCDM. But you were also telling me that he was sent, I think, by Homeland Ministries, wasn't it?
Yes.
He was sent to France. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because isn't that what led to the creation of the Harold Wilke Scholarship Fund?
Yes, and that would be by the World Board.
Okay. So, the Global Ministry Board.
Yes, which is now called Global Ministry. At that time it was the Board for World Ministry. And Harold had experience, of course, with being armless. And the thalidomide crisis in Europe was a crisis that was because doctors prescribed the drug thalidomide to women when they were pregnant, and it resulted in some birth defects. Most of the birth defects were on the outer extremities, the legs or the arms. mostly, I think, the arms. And so Harold went over to France and did some kind of a tour of France, or did some kind of teaching in France, teaching in the France, in the Reformed church in France. And he was well received there because he gave hope to the parents of children who by showing them how much they could do with what they had left, you know, with what they could do to make it. That was really wonderful to hear him talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And really an interesting experience to have your disability become the greatest gift you can offer.
Yeah, you think about the theology of that, and it's almost the body itself becomes the ministry and the teaching, and in some ways, isn't that what the crucifixion is about? How do we actually put ourselves out to be of service to the world?
Yes.
So,
yes.
So
yes.
there's some.
So there's some profound theology in what Harold Wilke accomplished in Europe.
Right, and also you think of the implications of incarnation too when you hear that story.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, you do. At PSR, they have two statues of people without arms.
Oh, how interesting. Do you know how that came to be?
I really do not know how it came to be, but I have looked at that and really studied that very, very much. The Harold's attitude was, I think, that he could do what he needed to do. Harold was a very positive man who thought that you learn to do things by doing them. And you don't learn to do things by necessarily reading about them, but you learn to do things by doing them. I talked to him about we act our way into a new reality. And that's what I think Harold did, is he acted his way into a new reality. And he worked very hard at creating opportunities for other people to walk, to act their way into a new reality, which is what I think we're all called to do, actually.